Live from the monumentously impressive and always professional Fuck If I Know Studios, located in beautiful downtown Hamlin, Pennsylvania, it is yet another edition of Frank the Lunatic Rants. Good evening, everybody. Once again, your congenial host, Frank the Lunatic here, and our topic of discussion for tonight is, as I said previously, electric vehicles and the future of them and how they are leaving Americans with disabilities behind in the dust. There's been a lot of hype around electric vehicles over the last couple of years, and especially with the current administration passing that whole thing about how all vehicles in the future by 2035, I believe, have to be all electric vehicles. We're not emphasizing on hybrids anymore. Everything has to be electric. But unfortunately, there are a lot of issues with that. Earlier this year in 2021, some of you out there may or may not recall a Super Bowl commercial that aired with GM. And in the commercial, GM was basically stating outright that the future of its electronic vehicles were being designed for everyone. And the ad comes to a close with the image of a one-armed surfer to emphasize this point. But sometime later, after it originally appeared in the Super Bowl and they started replaying the advertising agency along with General Motors later switched the ad out, and they switched the surfer with a completely able-bodied counterpart with no explanation for the switch at all. Maybe it's because they've come to realize that electronic vehicles, as they are right now, as they currently are on the drawing boards, as they are currently producing or getting ramped up to start producing, have absolutely no consideration for Americans or the Americans with Disabilities Act. Unfortunately, electronic vehicles, or I'll just call them EVs, like everyone else does, I guess I'll give into that, are going to be our future, unfortunately. Personally, I don't agree with it. Any of you that have followed along with my podcast have come to see that I don't agree with them at all. Unfortunately, currently there are no electronic vehicles, EV vehicles, on the market or on the drawing board over the next couple of model years that are being designed for people with disabilities. And I don't necessarily mean all of your disabled people. I mean, we've all seen people with the disability, the handicap placards on. I'm not going towards the whole disabled community itself, because there are people who are disabled that are fully capable of driving a standard type of car the way they are now. I'm talking about people that do have special physical needs that currently have to drive vehicles that are set up a certain way to accommodate them. And they are the ones being left out in the cold, or as I say, being left in the dust. There are a lot of people out there that have to utilize things, and we've all seen them. Caravans, for example, where the back bumpers are chopped out or the sides are chopped into the frame. Everything's rearranged so that it can accommodate motors and lifts for wheelchairs. And I'm sure we've even seen the vans that a lot of counties have for transportation to transport senior citizens, disabled citizens. I am saying that wrong. Disabled senior citizens around for appointments. But unfortunately, none of the models currently on the market or coming out within the next 2 or 3 years actually are designed for disabled people. And retrofitting these vehicles like we currently do with ramps and equipment like that are basically close to impossible due to the architectural design of EV vehicles. Because not many people are aware, unless you really are into EVs and actually follow along with the whole technical aspects of them. The fact that just about your whole chassis, the whole underneath of your car is a battery. You're basically sitting on top of a battery with four wheels on it. And the only vehicle, the only EV that is currently on the drawing boards that may be possible to be slightly accessible by certain types of handicapped individuals isn't being introduced to the year 2023, but even that model is not actually marketed towards disabled drivers. It's more marketed towards, people that are, I guess, minor handicaps. Maybe it's easier to get in and out, but it's actually not being marketed towards the truly handicapped, disabled drivers that do need special equipment to accommodate them. As I said before, a lot of us have seen the caravans that are converted with ramps on it that can transport people with their electric wheelchairs. And a lot of people, and to a lot of families, these vehicles are critical. People that have kids with diseases, muscular dystrophy, things of that sort, that your children are in wheelchairs, and it's more of a convenience to be able to transport your child or an adult in their chair into a vehicle as opposed to trying to unstrap the individual, get them situated in a vehicle. When they started coming out with these modified vehicles many years ago, it was a lifeline to a lot of people. It was a big help. It helped people get around, and it also helped people that are capable of driving, that have disabilities, with these accommodations that they can get in and out of their vehicles to be able to drive. I mean, unfortunately, these vehicles are outrageously expensive as it is currently. A lot of times you have to finance them specially through special programs, and you have to find funding out there to help you to afford these things. And unfortunately, the price tags are only going to go up with new technology. Don't believe the hype, first of all, people. All these things, Elon Musk, all these people, even, our wacky president, Jumping Joe Magoo, saying that the prices of these vehicles are going to come down and be affordable. They don't, people. They don't. Don't believe the bullshit regarding all that. I mean, if you research it from a statistical standpoint, first of all, most vehicles increase in price every model year, anywhere from $1,200 to $1,800 on the average each model year, because of inflation, because of the cost of producing these vehicles when it comes to wages, because union wages go up every year. That's how their contracts are. So the price tags are going to go up more and more. By the time these vehicles are required in 14 years, you're looking at some of these electric vehicles now being anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 more in price. So add that on top of the additional pricing that you have for these specialized vehicles now, if they are capable of making them in the future. But as of right now, you can't even say price is the problem, because these new vehicles don't even exist for handicapped people. Electric vehicles they call it skateboard architecture. I mean, it's basically the battery pack, which is primarily the whole underneath of the vehicle, and the electric drivetrain, and the electrical architecture that's all under the floor of the vehicle. The whole underside of your EV vehicle is all electronics, all of it. And this makes EV vehicles even more difficult for people to get into that have physical disabilities. And this is people that have minor disabilities, because the floor is placed above the battery pack, which, first of all, in some cases, elevates the vehicle up more, for starters. And for Americans, drivers that are disabled, it's an untapped consumer base of 61 million people with nearly 500 million in disposable income, that extra inch or two could be the reason for not getting a license or owning an EV vehicle to transport yourself around, which also poses another problem with the developments of EV vehicles. If people aren't going to be able to afford them, especially people with disabilities, because of the added prices, which I'll discuss in a little while, the added prices currently of converting a vehicle over, Plus, add that into converting an electric vehicle, which is going to cost more if it's even capable of being retrofitted somehow. You add that into the whole cost, it makes it nearly impossible, for these average disabled people. And then it brings up the question of, okay, what about your government agencies that currently have transports to transport disabled people, elderly people? How are they affording it? I mean, that you're looking at a taxation issue where you're looking at taxes going up in order to fund these programs. If, again, it's capable of actually having EV vehicles retrofitted to accommodate people with certain disabilities. There are people out there with cerebral palsy, or some people call it cerebral palsy. You can call it either or, I guess, that have issues. They are fully capable of driving. They currently, they'll have issues with things like trying to put air in their tires, things like that. But an EV vehicle is going to make it even more difficult to get in and out of based on current designs. All because the driver's seat is basically higher up because of all the components. It makes it a tighter and, in some cases, a potentially unsafe type of issue of trying to get in and out of the vehicles. It's sort of like going back to the beginning of the 20th century, when cars started becoming more popular over the beginning of the century. And they were not designed for disabled people at all in any way, shape, or form. If you were disabled, you were basically SOL for decades, for many decades. When you look back at some of these older cars, at how high seats were, it took decades before things started changing. It would probably, I'll be honest with you, it probably didn't start until maybe the 80s when things started actually changing. When the whole Americans with Disabilities Act went into effect, I believe it was Reagan that signed that. Then you started seeing them considering, oh yeah, we do have people out there that are handicapped that, need to have access to vehicles. And that's what's going on now. How long is it going to take for the EV industry to actually catch up and realize, first of all, I'm not trying to say on a money issue that they're trying, yes, they're trying to make money, but there is basically a large base of people out there that will not be able to buy your product because they cannot safely enter and exit your product. Now, price-wise, in a typical gas or diesel-powered vehicle, like a minivan, for example, dropping the floor to accommodate these ramps and motors, they get dropped anywhere from 10 to 14 inches, cost up to $35,000 on top of the price of the vehicle. And a lot of times you have to get help from grants from state government programs, or if you're a veteran, a disabled veteran, help from the Veterans Department in regards to that. In the United States alone, there's about 20,000 of these conversions done every single year, plus other conversions, with hand-braking equipment. There's just different things to accommodate different disabilities. But as of right now, two of the largest companies out there that are involved in these conversions, Mobility Works and Bronability, have stated that right now with the designs that are being thrown out there for newer EV vehicles, they cannot in any way, shape, or form convert these EV vehicles to have a ramp due to the batteries and the electronics positions. Basically, it comes down to, a completely different type of vehicle would have to be designed just for people with disabilities, which of course, you're looking at the laws of supply and demand. They have to design a special vehicle. You're looking at a ridiculously high price tag because if, as the numbers say, about 20,000 conversions of regular vehicles happen a year, that's not many vehicles you technically are selling a year of a special model you're going to have to design. So the price tags are going to be ridiculous. Take into consideration the fact that you're looking at EV type of caravans. They're estimating by the year 2035, I think they were estimating an EV caravan was going to go, I think base price was probably going to be about $50,000 or so. And then add on another 30, 40, 50,000 just for the conversions. And you're looking at, $100,000 for a vehicle because you're disabled. And currently the closest thing out there is a conversion for the plug-in hybrids. The Chrysler Pacifica is one of the only ones that they can actually put a drop-down ramp in the rear of the vehicle because the plug-in hybrids don't have naturally the larger battery pack systems. But again, with the future that this administration has, forcing us to could go to nothing but EVs in a couple of years, these people again are going to be left in the dust. Now, yes, there are some larger electric vans that are on the drawing boards to be released as, I think it's maybe 2023 models. Ford has an E-Transit, and there's another vehicle from GM. But these things are designed and utilized for commercial fleets. They are not designed interior-wise to accommodate passengers. So the first actual EV minivan is going to be the Volkswagen ID Buzz, and that's supposed to come out in 2023. And even that, there is no way to convert that over for people with disabilities. There's a lot of issues out there. The ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, require things like roof heights of being a certain dimensions. Door openings have to be 56 inches tall, which makes it a problem when the floor is raised so much because of the electronics, the motors, and the batteries in EV vehicles. Even if there is a way, from looking at some of the things I was researching online from other articles that are being done about this topic, even if there's a way to devise some form of really super thin ramp, which again causes issues because these ramps are usually thick and heavier because of the weight of these electronic wheelchairs and that. If there's a way to devise a thinner type of ramp that could go between the floor and the battery, the problem is the ramp itself too. You're looking at what the requirements are for the slope of the ramp. And even if you can get that squeezed into it, you still have the automated tie-down systems to secure the wheelchairs once inside the vehicle, all these other things that have to be added on that there's absolutely no way to accommodate them with the current designs of EV vehicles. Not only that, but there's another issue as well. They have found that when it comes to EV vehicles and charging stations also are not designed for people with disabilities. They estimate about 1/3 of disabled drivers out there are going to have a hard time finding a charging station that they are physically capable of using on their own. And actually, those numbers are actually low, too. They will increase because there aren't that many people with disabilities with EV vehicles. People that actually have EV vehicles, currently or looking to get EV vehicles, are people that don't need these other major accommodations. But they are disabled, but they don't need the major accommodations. And these people are the ones that are saying that, look, I'm going to have a hard time. Imagine someone else that has to have one of these, bigger vans. Plus, another consideration is the weight of the cords for the charging cables. People don't realize, unless you own an EV vehicle, these cables produce a lot of heat, and they are insulated with a liquid-cooled system. So these things are hard and bulkier, and they're very awkward, and there isn't much they can do to redesign those because they run so hot because they're trying to charge your car up as quickly as possible. So there's an issue there too with, how are people that are disabled going to be able to unhook these cables from charging stations, bring them over to the charging port, hook them up, then reverse the process when they're done. Other issues that is not being considered because again, this is new technology, so the American with Disabilities Act really does have to be rewritten. Other issues is the amount of force required to connect the cables. It's not like putting a hose from a gas tank into your car. They require a bit of force in order to get them to securely latch onto the vehicle because there's so much voltage involved. You don't want these things coming off, falling into a puddle or something, and basically electrocuting a whole parking lot full of people. And a lot of EV charging stations you see now that are popping up, the parking spaces are bunched too close together, which also makes it very impossible for people with handicaps to be able to get in and out of their vehicles if there's another vehicle parked in the space next to them to charge their EV. They really need to take that into consideration, redesign all that. You're not going to be able to have side-by-side setups in order to support disabled drivers. Plus, take into consideration also trucks, buses, vehicles pulling trailers. You want EVs for all this, and you're not considering in the designs, even for the charging stations, that somebody that has an EV pickup truck that's pulling a trailer, they can't park in a side-by-side space. None of this is being taken into consideration by the industry or by the current administration that's forcing this shit down our throats. It's so easy for Jumpin' Joe to sit there and say, we want a future of EV vehicles, or, well, him stuttering through it, I'll just say, that, we want EV vehicles. It's all fine and dandy. Why pass this thing? Why have a mandate saying by a certain year this has to be done when you have not taken into consideration any of these other factors whatsoever? Dropping the ball big time on this one. It just seems that our American disabled drivers and passengers currently are an afterthought. We're all rushing into this thing. Oh, all the tree huggers, everybody with the environment. We need these EV vehicles. But you're not taking into consideration all the Americans, and even around the world even, people that you are leaving behind in the dust because, first of all, from an affordability aspect, it's even worse for them to try to afford an EV vehicle than trying to find a place to park these vehicles, if you even have one that is capable of accommodating you and your disability. It's a nightmare. And currently, there are only 2 car manufacturers out of all of them in the world, not just the United States. There are only 2 car manufacturers that are actually saying that, stepping up and saying they are committed with their engineers to try finding a way around this, but it's going to take time because they have to figure out how to design vans, that their products so that they can be converted safely, and there are only 2 companies that right now are willing to even consider this. Volkswagen and Toyota, the only 2 companies. So much for us, saying, America the best, and that, our car manufacturers, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, or whatever the hell Chrysler is called now, because they were bought out yet again. They should just let them hang out and just put them out to graze in the pasture like they did with American Motors. But anyway, a different rant altogether. None of our American car companies have said they're even considering trying to redesign or design a vehicle for people with disabilities. We're looking at a major problem going forward into the future. And, you could say, oh, yeah, we have a lot of time. We have 14 years before this all takes effect. No, we don't. This is all happening in steps along the way. GM and Ford are already starting announcing how they're stopping gasoline models of certain cars over the next 2 to 5 years. You're looking at a very short window of time that the car manufacturing company has to get together and figure something out. The companies that are designing these charging stations have to figure something out. Your communities and local governments need to figure something out as to where you're going to put these charging stations. You're going to need so much room in order to accommodate vehicles. It's great. You see places like Tesla, these little charging stations, I think the closest one to me is a charging station is 30 miles away or something, 40 miles away. And there's only a couple of spots. Oh boy, big deal. You're telling people you want them to buy these EV vehicles, but you don't even have enough charging stations out there. And yes, there's plans for having charging stations at gas stations, things like that. None of these things are designed. They're not even considering the fact that you're going to have, in 10 years, more than double the amount of EVs out there. Probably a hell of a lot more than double, being that the whole thing takes effect in 14 years. And like I said, certain models of cars are going to complete EVs. They're not considering any of this when it comes to the ability to actually charge these vehicles. When you consider how Americans even travel, we love traveling. They haven't taken any of that into consideration on where we're sticking all these vehicles to charge them. You're going to need huge parking areas. Forget these rest stops you have now along the turnpikes and the highways. You're going to need big ass freaking plots of land for people to stop and charge their vehicles along the way, and to be able to have the spaces for accessibility for people with disabilities. Look at people, for example, if you have, you're disabled because, you have an artificial arm, you have one of those metallic, I'll call them claws, you're capable of driving, okay? Yes, but you can never drive a Tesla. Why? Because Tesla, along with some of these other EVs that are coming out, use touch screens for you to do things on your vehicle, control your vehicle. Problem with touch screens, they only respond to the electromagnetic impulses that are generated by your body naturally. You have an artificial hand, an artificial limb, you're not generating any of that. You could sit there till you're blue in the face and you are never going to get that screen to operate. That's another thing that they are not considering with the designs of these vehicles, that there are people with certain disabilities that will never be able to even use functions on their vehicle, because we're moving everything over to this whole touch technology, which doesn't work with people with certain disabilities. They haven't even taken that into consideration. But yet again, as I've said before, Jumpin' Joe Magoo and his people are forcing this down our throats. You're leaving people with disabilities in the dust. And trust me, there's going to be a lot of outrage over the next couple years over this. You're going to see this topic coming to light in mainstream media and news regarding all the issues with this. It's going to happen. And American car industries better wake the hell up and figure something out. Local governments better figure something out in regards to how you're going to accommodate all these charging vehicles, all these, everything out there. We're not taking it into consideration at all. I, my friends, am Frank the Lunatic, and I, of course, have approved this message, and for now, that's all I'm saying about that.
Birthday card, birthday card, birthday card, birthday card, birthday card, are the birthday card. Birthdays are the best ever. Do you like birthdays? I like birthday cakes. Do you? The end. Birthday.
Oh, thank you.